Okay, it looks like we are live. Thierry, thank you so much for jumping in. We didn't quite get all the way through your presentation. Can you pick up where you left off? We were talking about some of the difficulties that you've been facing.
Okay, you mean difficulties in terms of co-production
Yes,
or
yes, with the
yes?
with the
Okay.
yes.
Yes, I mean, of course, one of I mean, I think it's really about the issues that could happen when you start a co-production in terms of that it takes a little bit more time that people expect, obviously, because you need to work with other people. There may be some communication issues between the companies who don't know each other, etc. There may be some administrative points to be done in terms of contract, etc., and maybe the synchronization of the work in general, but also to synchronize the access to finance and the access to the different experts or people doing the game. So these are I guess the points that are the main issues for co-production.
So, how receptive have African governments been to starting co-production programs? Have you found that governments have blocked you in any way?
Well, we haven't talked to anybody with African governments yet, to be honest. I mean, I must say that in Europe, it's also quite a new concept for gaming. I mean, as you know, it's very developed in animation and film for many years. But for gaming, it's not completely developed yet. And I would say, if I look at Europe, I would say it's not really a problem coming from governments, but more coming from the studios, to be honest. Because we have a bit of difficulty to get studio to understand this idea of collaborating and working together on a common project. From the government side, if I can say a little bit what's happening in Europe, because I say in Africa we haven't talked to anyone, but in Europe, well, the governments are very open about it. And in fact, we're doing more and more sessions, also closed session with governments from different countries. And people say, yes, let's go for it. It works. It's possible. People should work more together, should have more collaboration, and we can open things. There are a few administrative points to be, as I say, to make things really happening. But the governments in Europe are very, very interested to do that. I mean, the idea is more, let's do, bigger projects, less project, but bigger, and let's have people to find complementary expertise instead of trying to do everything alone. But I'll be interested to talk to African governments. I mean, I guess some point we will need to talk about that, but we haven't done it yet. And of course, I mean, as you know, in most countries, I think there's no really support for video games. So I think that's a little bit the difficulty. And in Europe, it's the same. Huh? We're talking to the people who at the moment have money. I mean, like France and Germany, who have a lot of money, as explained as well in the presentation. But you have many countries in Europe who have no direct support to video game yet. But it's coming. It's coming, I can tell you.
Uh, so what are the next steps then for Spiel Fabrique for entering Africa? What are you currently working on? How do we
Yeah,
what will we be seeing in the next few
yes.
months?
Well, hopefully you will see something from us. I mean, okay, you didn't see the end of the presentation, but okay, we did a pilot test this year in the end of 19 and 20. We selected 3 companies from 3 African countries, and they came into the mentoring program, and they presented at the co-production market, which took place in September online. It's supposed to be in Strasbourg in France, but it was online this year. And we have already from the 3 project from Africa, 2 are working on co-production. So that means they found co-producers in France and Germany in that case. And now they're in the next step. So we help them to go into the next step, which is to develop a project together and access funding in France and Germany. So we want to develop that further. As I say, it was a pilot, and we are unfortunately. I was thinking we would have some kind of final answer today, but we haven't received it. But we are in final discussion with the German Foreign Ministry to develop a much larger program based on the pilot for next year. So, I mean, to be honest, they pre-accepted the project. So I think we can say that we are, let's say, okay, 70-80% chance that it will be done. But we haven't got the final confirmation. But the idea would be that we would be able to do a project, a mentoring project next year with more African teams. So I think we're talking about around 8 or 10 teams. Where we would do, a larger workshop, hopefully with you next year during the African Game Week, to explain a little bit how to develop a potential co-production with Europe, and mentoring you and doing after a lot of online mentoring, and to get ready for the co-production market, which will take place in April 22 in Berlin. Hopefully offline, because I hope we can meet each other at some point. So we hope to come next year to Cape Town, and then the selected teams will come to Berlin in April 22. So if all goes well, we will send a call for project, I would say around the summer, or before the summer, June 21. We would do this selection and the workshop before and for the African Game Week, and then prepare the people until April 22 for the co-production in Berlin. So that's a good plan, no?
That's a lot. That's exciting, because it means that there's some real potential opportunities.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it might be good to take a bit of a step back and really ask the question: what can a studio do to make it a better candidate for a co-production model? What things should they have in place so that they could be maybe one of those 8 that get selected?
Yes, good question. I mean, we're looking, of course, people who are open to do a co-production. So not a studio says, well, I want to do everything alone in my way and on my side, and we want a team that says, okay, I've got a great idea, I've got a project that we could develop, but it's much bigger than we could do it alone. So let's work with someone else who could help us. And the idea is to develop a common project. I think it's the main point. I mean, in terms of collaboration, I guess, work for hire. I mean, okay, you've got a budget and you ask another studio to do a part, for example, 3D or, what we are looking at is something different. It's something to say, okay, I've got an idea. I can do this part of the project, and I've got the story, but I need someone else to do the 3D, but they will do that with us together, and they will find funding for their part. So they are not bringing funding to us in Africa, I mean to the original project from Africa, but for the project that will be a co-production between one of the African country and one of the European country. So it's really that to understand. It's not very complex to understand, but I can tell you we still have difficulties to explain that sometimes. So it's not about getting money from France, for example, and just do it in wherever you are in Africa. It's to do a project together with a French team who will get access money in France to do their part for the project. So it means to share IP and revenues, basically. And then, of course, very important is with a project like that, much bigger, you can go to a publisher. The idea is not to develop just a project together and do it alone. I mean, you could do self-publishing, no problem, but it doesn't mean you cannot access a publisher after. In fact, you should be in a better position to go to see a publisher, because you will need no money or less money, and you will need really their expertise.
So, I mean, one of the questions that we were going to address, by the way, we still have a bit of time with Thierry, so if you have a question, now would be the time to pop it into the chat there. But one of the earlier questions you've kind of answered, talking about why not do a work for hire process to start with, but I think you covered that quite clearly. And you've also given us a lot of the positives for this kind of inter-country collaboration that you're speaking about. What are some of the difficulties that might face two teams working not just in different countries but on different continents. Are there things that would actually make this process a bit tougher?
Yes, I mean, as I said at the beginning, I mean, definitely it's not. I don't think you will believe me if I would say it's much more simple than do it alone. No, it makes things difficult, definitely. But that's the price to pay. And also, to be honest, when you look at what's happening in animation or film in the last 20 years, people had problems at the beginning, but as soon as they did a couple of games together, after they knew each other and they worked very well, and it's all fine. But it's not the most simple thing to do. I mean, there is a connection, there is maybe a time difference, difference of culture, different way to work on a game. Yeah, so it's a lot of. So it will take some time. I mean, again, in film, if you remember 20 years ago, the beginning of the co-production, there were lots of very bad films that were done because people didn't understand each other, didn't know what to do to work together. But now, after many years, you see now co-production are really the way to go. I mean, for example, TV series today are very strong because there are lots of TV companies, strong TV companies working together. Animation is only on co-production. It doesn't work the other way. So I'm not sure we can do exactly the same, and we have to find the best way to do it in the game sector. But of course, there will be a transition phase where people will have to get to know each other and see who is good, who is not good, who can work like that online or who cannot. It's definitely. But it's not very far from what we live now with the COVID, to be honest.
That is true. This
We
year.
don't travel, so it's the same. So I think we're learning a lot now, so it should help.
Is government support required from both countries to make this co-production work? Do we need buy-in from the governments?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Of course, again, I'm not going to lie, it's better if you can get money from both sides, because of course, the idea is it will be good to have some money from one country, from South Africa, and some money from France. It's better, but it doesn't have to. I mean, this year, for example, with our 3 African teams, they didn't have any government support from Africa, and they brought what they had, which is the game which was already developed, and maybe a prototype, etc. So of course they can bring that in the marriage, basically. They can say, okay, I've got that. Of course, it's a little bit unbalanced, and we discussed that, and we are very, very clear about that. Of course, the African teams have to develop and to invest quite a lot, and then the European team would be basically paid, but not fully, because public funding is only 50%. But they would be partly funded to do what they have to do on the game. So of course, it's not very fair. But unfortunately, it's the situation today, and that should be reflected in the discussion, in the contractual discussion about the share of the IP and the revenue, etc. And of course, at some point, maybe the African governments could understand that, if they put a little bit money on the table as well, their teams could have a better position to do this different co-production. So they don't have to, but it's better.
Wow. Okay, Thierry, thank you so much for your time. Again, apologies for the break in the transmission, but I'm glad that we were able to get you back on. I think our technical team is sorting that all out in the background.
Okay.
So we have about 20 minutes before our next session. So please make sure that you hang around for that. Thierry, again, thank you so much for your time.
Welcome. Thank you.
Please remember, if you are watching, you want to network with people, use the My Meetings function in Pine, as well as using the random networking function. You can meet someone random. You now have...
Yes. Look out for Spiel Fabrique website and Twitter and everything for the call for project for Africa for next year. And I hope we can all meet next December in Cape Town.
Oh, it'll be great to meet you face to face for the first time. That'll be fantastic. Now is a good opportunity to use that random networking feature, and that way you can have a meeting with someone, connect with them, take some of Dee's advice from the past talk, and actually apply that there. Thank you so much. We will be back in the next 20 minutes.